Hey, welcome back everybody. This is video number 8 in our Python for Beginners series. Today we're going to take a look at error handling and exceptions. By the end of this video, you'll know how to manage errors in your code effectively, making your program more robust and user-friendly. So let's take a look. All right, so when it comes to programming, errors and exceptions are just inevitable. They're gonna happen, guys. Get over it. If you think you're gonna write some code or a whole program and never have errors, if you do, I think you'd probably be the first person to ever do that, to be honest. They occur when something goes wrong during the execution of a program. Understanding how to handle these errors can help you write more reliable code. So let's take a look at the different types of errors in Python. First type is going to be a syntax error. This occurs when the code violates the syntax rules of Python. So you have to type certain things a certain way. Um, and if you fat finger something or you don't know the right syntax and you try it, you're probably going to get a syntax error. The next kind is a runtime error. These occur during the execution of the program, such as trying to divide by 0 or accessing a non-existent file. And that'll make more sense once we dive into that. Logical errors, these occur when the code doesn't produce the expected result. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into each one of these. We'll take a look at syntax errors first. So syntax errors. So again, syntax errors occur when the code violates the syntax rules of Python. For example, a missing colon at the end of an if statement. So if you guys have been following along, we covered if statements in one of the previous videos. And we know that at the end of the if statement, we're supposed to have a colon. But what if you forget that? Well, first of all, the IDE is going to bark at you, which is nice, which is what is nice about using an IDE such as PyCharm. Video number 2, we installed that, by the way. So right away, you're going to see that, but maybe you're using something that's not an intelligent IDE. And we'll just say 5 is greater than 2. All right, so let's try to run this. We already know we have this little red line here and also up here. That's indicating an error, but let's run it. Syntax error, expected a colon. Again, this is what's really nice about using an IDE, right? So if you add that colon, everything's happy and you can run it. But if you don't, obviously that is a syntax error because it violates the syntax rules of Python. So things have to be formatted a specific way for the code to work. Okay, so let's take a look at the next type of an error, which is a runtime error. And this is kind of what it sounds like. Like I said, runtime errors occur during the execution of the program. So let's take a look at a quick example. All right, let's say number equals 10. If I could type, result equals number divided by 0. Print the result. Okay, so we get a runtime error here. It says 0 division error, division by 0. So you can't divide by 0 in Python. It's not going to let you do that. So the code raised a 0 division error because dividing by 0 is not allowed, like I just said. Okay, so let's take a look at an introduction to exception handling. Python provides a way to handle runtime errors using the try and except blocks. So if any of you use PowerShell, you may have heard of try catch. This is kind of similar. It's try except. So try except blocks. This is known as the exception handling. So let's take a look at how it works. The try block contains the code that might raise an exception. So that's like the code that you want to try. And the except block contains the code that runs if an exception occurs. So let's modify our previous example to catch or to handle the exception of that 0 division error. All right, so I'm going to go here. I'm just going to type it out for you guys. So we're going to say try, and you got to have the colon at the end there. Number equals 10. And we'll do result equals number. And then again, I'm sorry, number divided by 0. And then we're going to print that result. And then we're going to come down here. We're going to do except. I'm sorry, we have to tell it except what. So except if there's this kind of error, which is a 0 division error. And then instead of crashing the program and throwing that error, we're going to print. So we're going to say if this error happens, like except in this case, we're going to print to the screen error. You cannot divide by 0. All right, let's give that a shot. There we go. So we didn't get any red, we didn't get any errors that time. We just triggered the except block of this code, and that gave us the print statement that we told it to do. So this could be handy. Maybe you have a screen where there's user input. There's a ton of cases for this, obviously, but maybe you have a screen with user input and it's expecting a specific type of data, and the user provides the wrong kind. Instead of crashing the program, you could just have it, accept whatever the specific type of error may be. And there's another, we're going to get into another case as well, or another parameter for this as well. But instead of crashing your program, you can just have it print something. Hey, sorry, try again. You entered a letter, you need a number, or whatever the case is. All right, guys, moving on to multiple except blocks. So here we're actually going to do something a little different, and we're going to prompt the user for input. So we say here value equals integer and then input, and then within there we have a message. So this little block of code right here is going to prompt the user, and we'll see it down here in the terminal, enter a number, right? So this is cool. If you want to prompt for user input in your program, it's as simple as doing this right here. And obviously you can change that number to whatever you want. And then that stores that user input, whatever they enter here, as a variable, in this case called value. Okay, so from there we're going to run result equals 10 divided by that value. So if they put 0 in there, well, let's not get to that yet, but result equals 10 divided by the value they put in, and then print that result. First exception block is the 0 division error. So if they did put 0 here when prompted, it should trigger this first except block, and it should print error, you cannot divide by 0. Unless you're Terrence Howard, right? 1 times 1 equals 2. I'm just kidding. Whole nother subject. Except value error. So this is the second except block. So this would be if they entered something that is not a valid number. For example, if I put a letter there, it should trigger this except block. So let's go ahead and run this, and we'll just talk through it. All right, so it did trigger this first part here, which is the value, the creation of the value variable, and it's asking for input. So I'm going to input 2, and then I'm going to hit enter, and that's going to give me 5. So 10 divided by 5 is, I'm sorry, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this program is already better at math than Terrence Howard, which is very impressive. If you guys haven't seen Terrence Howard in the news and on YouTube about his crazy math and stuff, you could go down a wormhole, a rabbit hole, whatever. If you get bored, check it out. It's very interesting to say the least. He really believes that 1 times 1 is 2. So, uh, strange guy. All right, moving on. Let's run this again, guys. So let me just talk through that real quick. We put in a valid integer here when asked for it, and the result was 5. So no exceptions happened, right? There was no 0 divide error. There was no value error. Now let's try to produce an error. So obviously I'll put in 0, hit enter, and perfect. We get that first except block triggered, and we see our print statement here. Error, you cannot divide by 0. Great. So our code works when you put in a number that's acceptable. Our code works when you put in 0, and we throw that except block there. Let's try the last except block. So what if I put in like a letter M? Nice. So we get the invalid input. Please enter a valid number. So we triggered that except. So that's perfect. You can also do a finally block here, right? So you could say finally, and then you could say print. This is running the finally block no matter what happens. So this is kind of cool. You can have, regardless of whether you trigger any exception blocks, no exception blocks, you're still going to hit that finally block at the end. So let's just run this one more time. And obviously this isn't a real world example, but maybe you needed it to do something else besides look for these excepts. You could run a finally. So let's just run this again. And I'm going to say 2. All right, so we see it triggered no exceptions, but it ran the finally block. That should do the same thing when we hit an exception. So I'm going to say 0. Perfect. So we get the error for dividing by 0. So we triggered the first exception block, and then we triggered the finally block. And obviously the same should be true if we trigger the second exception block. Perfect. So that's an example of how you can have multiple exceptions or except blocks. And you can also tack on optional, obviously, the finally block if you needed something to happen every time regardless. All right, so that was an introduction to try except, and then we looked at multiple except blocks, and we looked at using the finally block as well. So let's take a look at raising exceptions. So sometimes you might want to raise an exception yourself using the raise keyword. This can be useful for validating conditions in your code. So let's take a look. I'm going to paste in an example here. I think I forgot to delete that. Sorry. Okay, so what is this code doing? In this example, we use raise to throw a value error if the age is less than 18 and handle the exception with a try except block. All right, so we're going to check the age. If age is less than 18, raise a value error. Age must be at least 18. Return age. Try age equals check age 16. Print age is age. Except value error as E, print error E. So this is going to print the error that comes on the screen, right? So let's try that. Age must be at least 18. Perfect. So what if we do 18? Age is 18. So it triggered this instead of the except. So this is a way for you to build in your own kind of raising your own value error or different types of error depending on the outcome of the code. So Python natively doesn't see this as an error, but your program has told it, hey, if this happens, I want you to raise this error, right? So if the age is less than 18, raise a value error, and this is the message for that particular value error. So this is a way, this is a little bit advanced, but this is a way that you can build in your own error checking and handling within your Python script or program. Because again, this normally wouldn't trigger any type of an error because this isn't like an invalid value or anything like that, but you're creating a condition that says, hey, if it's less than 18, now this actually is an error. So I want you to raise that error. Hopefully that makes sense there, guys. All right, so that was our introduction to error handling and exceptions in Python. By using try except blocks, you can make your code more robust and user friendly. To practice, why don't you guys follow along with what I did, rewind the video, or even take a look at some of the following exercises. And I'm going to list those out here in a second. But before I do that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Python tutorials and just everything tech and geek in general. So I really appreciate all your guys' support. If you stuck around to the end of the video, thank you so much. Like I said, please subscribe, guys, because I'm trying to get to 10,000. We're doing pretty good here so far, but we've got a ways to go, and I obviously can't get there without your guys' support. All right, so I'm going to put a few instructions here on the screen. Feel free to pause, and if you would like some homework, feel free to follow along and jot these down. I should comment these so I don't have all these syntax errors. All right, so go ahead and take a look at these and see if you guys can accomplish that and let me know. So the first one is write a program that reads a number from the user and handles the case where the input is not a valid number. Then I want you to try to write a program that reads a file and handles the case where the file does not exist. Then I want you to write a function that raises an exception if a string is empty and handle this exception when calling the function. So if you guys are feeling ambitious and you really want to get some stick time, which I 100% encourage because watching my videos, I obviously encourage that as well. Thank you guys. The best way you're going to learn is follow along, whether that's with me or anyone else that's doing demonstrations. If you're anything like me, you have to actually do it for it to stick and for you to really retain that knowledge. You have to practice, you have to fail, And it's not really failing. It's just your first, second, third, fourth attempt, in my opinion, even if it's 100 attempts. There's no such thing as failing, guys, unless you give up. I truly do believe that. Failure is a good thing. That means you're trying. If you're never failing, that means you're shooting way too low. You're aiming way too low, right? If you're always crushing anything that you try to do, that means you're probably playing in the baby pond. You need to get out of your comfort zone and try to execute some of this Python code, right? But yeah, seriously, guys, let me know if you follow along with this with these homework assignments or just what I did in general. Let me know if you guys had any issues with that, any questions. Again, I'm always glad to kind of come back and do a follow-up video to clear up anything. All right, guys, I hope you are learning a lot. I know this is a lot of information. I am trying to keep it at a very basic level. Not to say this isn't good stuff, because it is. You need to know the fundamentals before you move on to doing anything super fancy. And that's with anything, right? Not just programming or Python, but that's really with anything. You need to lay down that foundation first and then build upon that. All right, guys, let me know what you think. I'll have the next video out soon. We're almost done with the series, and we're going to wrap it up with a simple, fun exercise of putting all of this together, or most of this together, into a small application. So stick around, guys. I don't think you're going to want to miss the next few videos. And until the next one, take care.